If you are over 50 and managing blood sugar, there is something important to understand right away. Blood sugar is not just a medical issue. It is a dialogue happening inside your body every single day, shaped by what you eat, how your cells respond, and how time has gently changed your metabolism. And one of the most powerful ways to guide that dialogue is through vegetables, not as restrictions, but as partners in balance. As we age, the body becomes more sensitive, not weaker. Leafy green vegetables like spinach, kale, and other dark greens play a quiet but profound role here. They slow the entry of sugar into the bloodstream through natural fiber, while minerals like magnesium help insulin communicate more effectively with your cells. This isn't about forcing blood sugar down. It's about helping the body remember how to regulate itself with grace. Some vegetables challenge our assumptions. Bitter vegetables, often avoided for their taste, carry deep biological intelligence. Bitter gourd and fenugreek leaves contain plant compounds that gently support insulin's role, guiding glucose into cells rather than allowing it to linger in the blood. These plants don't overpower the system. They assist it, reminding us that balance is often subtle, not aggressive. Then there are cruciferous vegetables: broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, working quietly behind the scenes. Their real gift is not just fiber, but their ability to reduce inflammation. Inflammation interferes with insulin sensitivity, especially in older adults. When inflammation settles, insulin works more efficiently. The body doesn't need to struggle as hard. Control returns not through force, but through cooperation. Vegetables like okra, green beans, and similar fiber-rich plants create a physical transformation during digestion. Their soluble fiber slows digestion, smooths glucose release, and prevents the sharp spikes that tire the pancreas over time. For seniors, this steady rhythm is essential. Aging bodies thrive on consistency, not extremes. And these vegetables help establish that internal calm. Finally, there is a quieter benefit that often goes unnoticed. Vegetables such as zucchini, cucumber, and bottle gourd hydrate cells, reduce insulin demand, and bring lightness to meals. But beyond biology, they restore confidence. Choosing foods that support blood sugar naturally is an act of trust in your body's wisdom. It shifts the focus from fear of disease to respect for how the body heals when given the right support. This is not about perfection. It's about daily alignment. Small choices, repeated consistently, allowing the body to find balance. Again, one meal, one vegetable, one mindful decision at a time.
If you are over 50 and managing blood sugar, there is a quiet realization that often comes with age. A realization that blood sugar is not merely a number printed on a lab report, but a living signal, a reflection of how well the body is communicating with itself. Inside you, trillions of cells are listening for instructions, waiting for insulin to knock gently and say, "Here is the energy you need." Over time, that knock can become softer, slower, sometimes ignored. Not because the body has failed, but because it has been working tirelessly for decades. This is where leafy green vegetables enter the story, not as a diet rule, but as biological allies that help restore this conversation. Spinach, kale, mustard greens, and similar plants carry a rare balance of fiber, minerals, and plant compounds that slow the arrival of sugar into the bloodstream, allowing the body to respond with patience instead of urgency. When glucose enters slowly, insulin does not need to rush, and the cells do not resist, creating a calm metabolic environment that is especially important for seniors. Magnesium, found naturally in these greens, plays a crucial role here. Because insulin is not just a hormone, it is a message, and magnesium helps that message travel clearly from the bloodstream into the cell. Without enough of it, the signal weakens, glucose lingers, and blood sugar rises silently. Leafy greens also influence the liver, the organ that quietly decides how much sugar stays in circulation and how much is stored. By reducing inflammation and oxidative stress, these vegetables help the liver make wiser decisions, preventing unnecessary glucose release during rest or sleep. What makes this even more meaningful is how little effort is required. A bowl of greens folded into daily meals, lightly cooked or gently raw, providing structure and stability to digestion. Fiber from these vegetables forms a natural barrier in the gut, slowing digestion just enough to prevent spikes without creating heaviness or discomfort, something aging digestive systems deeply appreciate. There is also a neurological layer to this process. Because stable blood sugar protects the brain, reducing mental fog, fatigue, and mood swings that many seniors accept as normal aging but are often signs of glucose instability. When blood sugar steadies, the brain feels safe, energy becomes predictable, and the body relaxes into itself. Perhaps most important is the psychological effect. The quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are supporting your body rather than fighting it. Leafy greens do not demand discipline, they invite consistency, and over time, that consistency reshapes how the body responds to food, stress, and even sleep. In this way, managing blood sugar through vegetables becomes less about control and more about cooperation. A daily act of respect toward a body that has carried you faithfully through life and is now asking, gently, to be nourished with understanding rather than force. As we grow older, taste often becomes a guide rather than a pleasure, and bitterness is something many people learn to avoid. Yet in nature, bitterness frequently signals usefulness rather than danger. For seniors managing blood sugar, bitter vegetables occupy a special place, because they speak directly to the systems that regulate glucose without overwhelming them. Plants like bitter gourd and fenugreek leaves contain naturally occurring compounds that influence how sugar is handled at the cellular level, gently encouraging glucose to move out of the bloodstream and into cells where it can be used for energy. This process does not rely on force or stimulation, but on imitation, as these plant compounds behave in ways that resemble insulin's natural action, supporting the body's own mechanisms rather than replacing them. With age, insulin does not disappear. It becomes less persuasive, and bitter vegetables help restore that persuasion quietly and consistently. The pancreas, which produces insulin, benefits from this gentle assistance because it reduces the pressure to overproduce, protecting it from exhaustion over time. This matters deeply for seniors, because long-term blood sugar control is not about dramatic drops, but about preserving function for the years ahead. Bitter vegetables also slow the digestion of carbohydrates, reducing the speed at which glucose enters the blood, creating smoother curves rather than sharp peaks that strain the system. At the same time, they influence gut health, supporting beneficial bacteria that play a surprising role in glucose regulation and inflammation control. A healthier gut environment improves insulin sensitivity, allowing the body to respond more efficiently to meals without escalating blood sugar levels. There is also a signaling effect that occurs through taste receptors in the digestive tract, where bitterness triggers hormonal responses that improve metabolic balance even before food is fully digested. This early communication prepares the body to handle glucose more intelligently, a process that becomes increasingly valuable as metabolic reactions slow with age. Beyond biology, bitter vegetables offer an emotional lesson as well, because choosing them is an act of patience and trust, a willingness to value long-term stability over immediate pleasure. When seniors incorporate these vegetables regularly, whether lightly cooked, blended, or paired with familiar foods, the body adapts, tastes, perception changes, and bitterness softens into acceptance. Over time, this shift mirrors what happens internally, as glucose control becomes less reactive and more composed. Energy levels stabilize, cravings reduce, and the constant cycle of spikes and crashes begins to loosen its grip. In this way, bitter vegetables become more than food. They become teachers, reminding the body how to regulate itself through subtle guidance rather than aggressive intervention, allowing balance to return gradually and sustainably as part of daily living. There is a quiet strength in vegetables that work behind the scenes, and cruciferous vegetables belong firmly in that category, offering benefits that extend far beyond what happens immediately after a meal. For seniors managing blood sugar, vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and similar plants play a crucial role not by directly lowering glucose in dramatic ways, but by addressing one of the most overlooked barriers to healthy insulin function, chronic low-grade inflammation. As the body ages, inflammation often becomes a constant background signal, subtle enough to ignore, yet powerful enough to interfere with how insulin communicates with cells. When inflammation is present, insulin's message becomes distorted, and glucose remains in the bloodstream longer than it should. Cruciferous vegetables contain plant compounds that help calm this internal noise, allowing insulin to speak more clearly and cells to respond without resistance. This is not a fast process, and that is precisely why it works so well for older bodies. Because aging metabolism responds better to steady correction than to sudden intervention. These vegetables also support the liver, an organ deeply involved in blood sugar regulation but rarely acknowledged in everyday discussions. The liver decides when to store glucose and when to release it, especially during periods of rest or fasting. And inflammation can cause it to release sugar unnecessarily, raising blood sugar even when no food has been eaten. By reducing oxidative stress and improving liver function, cruciferous vegetables help restore more accurate glucose decision. At the digestive level, their fiber contributes to slower carbohydrate absorption, preventing sharp glucose rises that place repeated stress on insulin pathways. Yet their influence does not stop there, because these vegetables also support cellular detoxification, helping aging cells clear metabolic waste more efficiently. When cells are cleaner internally, they respond better to insulin. Much like a well-maintained engine runs more smoothly without needing extra fuel. For seniors, this cellular clarity translates into more stable energy, fewer cravings, and less fatigue after meals. There is also a neurological dimension, because inflammation affects the brain as well as the body, contributing to mental fog and mood instability that often accompany blood sugar swings. As inflammation settles, the brain regains a sense of predictability, and mental energy becomes more consistent throughout the day. Perhaps the most meaningful aspect of cruciferous vegetables is how they restore patience to the metabolic system. They do not rush outcomes or force rapid changes, but instead guide the body back toward balance through repeated, gentle signals. Over time, regular consumption creates an internal environment where insulin sensitivity improves naturally. Glucose control becomes less reactive, and the body feels supported rather than stressed. In this way, these vegetables demonstrate that lasting blood sugar balance in later life is not achieved by controlling numbers aggressively, but by calming the deeper processes that govern how the body listens, responds, and heals. As the body ages, digestion becomes less about speed and more about rhythm, and vegetables rich in soluble fiber play a defining role in shaping that rhythm. For seniors managing blood sugar, vegetables like okra, green beans, and similar plants create a physical change inside the digestive tract that directly influences how glucose enters the bloodstream. Soluble fiber absorbs water and forms a soft, gel-like substance that slows the movement of food, allowing carbohydrates to be broken down gradually rather than all at once. This slowing effect gives insulin the time it needs to work efficiently, reducing sudden spikes that place stress on the pancreas. Over the years, the pancreas has worked continuously, responding to every meal, every snack, every stress signal, and when blood sugar rises too quickly, it is forced to respond with urgency. Fiber-rich vegetables reduce that urgency, protecting pancreatic function and preserving insulin production for the long term. This is especially important for seniors, because the goal is not simply to lower blood sugar today, but to prevent exhaustion of the systems responsible for control tomorrow. These vegetables also influence hunger and satiety, because slower digestion leads to longer-lasting fullness, reducing the likelihood of overeating or reaching for quick sugars later in the day. This steady appetite regulation is deeply connected to blood sugar stability, as frequent spikes and crashes often drive cravings that feel uncontrollable. At the gut level, soluble fiber feeds beneficial bacteria that contribute to improved glucose metabolism and reduced inflammation. A healthier gut environment enhances insulin sensitivity, creating a supportive feedback loop that reinforces balance rather than disruption. There is also a mechanical benefit to this process, because the gel formed by soluble fiber acts as a natural barrier, moderating the absorption of glucose without blocking nutrients. The body receives what it needs, just at a pace it can manage comfortably. For aging systems, this pacing is essential, as slower metabolic responses require gentler inputs. Over time, this consistent slowing of glucose release trains the body to expect steadiness rather than sudden change, improving metabolic predictability and reducing fatigue after meals. Seniors often notice fewer energy crashes, clearer thinking, and improved mood when digestion becomes more regulated. Beyond physiology, there is a sense of reassurance that comes from eating foods that support rather than challenge the body. Fiber-rich vegetables do not demand restraint or complex rules. They simply create conditions where the body can function more intelligently. They allow the digestive system to become a partner in blood sugar control instead of a source of stress. With regular inclusion, these vegetables reshape daily metabolic patterns, making balance feel natural rather than forced. In this way, managing blood sugar through soluble fiber becomes less about intervention and more about alignment, allowing the aging body to move at a pace that honors its needs while quietly sustaining long-term stability. There is a dimension of blood sugar balance that extends beyond organs and hormones, reaching into the emotional and psychological experience of aging, and vegetables with high water content and light metabolic impact quietly shape this dimension. For seniors, vegetables such as zucchini, cucumber, bottle gourd, and similar plants reduce the overall glucose burden of a meal while supporting hydration at the cellular level. Hydrated cells respond more efficiently to insulin. BECAUSE, water allows nutrients and signals to move freely across cell membranes, improving metabolic communication. When dehydration is present, glucose concentration rises more easily. Insulin works harder, and the body interprets this strain as fatigue or weakness. Light vegetables counter this by easing the internal environment, allowing blood sugar regulation to feel less like a struggle and more like a natural process. These vegetables also reduce insulin demand, because they provide volume and satisfaction without overwhelming the bloodstream with glucose. This is especially important for seniors whose insulin response may be slower or less flexible than in younger years. By lowering the metabolic load of meals, the body is given space to recover, repair, and adapt. There is also a nervous system effect at play, because stable blood sugar supports calm brain function, reducing irritability, anxiety, and mental fog that often accompany glucose fluctuations. When the brain senses stability, stress hormones decrease, further improving insulin sensitivity in a reinforcing cycle. Beyond physiology, the act of choosing these vegetables carries psychological significance. It represents a shift away from fear-based eating toward trust-based nourishment. Many seniors carry years of dietary confusion, rules, and restrictions that create anxiety around food. Light vegetables soften this relationship, making meals feel safe again. They encourage consistency rather than perfection, allowing daily habits to form without pressure. Over time, this consistency rebuilds confidence in the body's ability to self. These vegetables also support kidney function and circulation, helping remove excess glucose and metabolic waste more efficiently. This gentle cleansing effect contributes to a feeling of lightness that many seniors describe, not just physically, but emotionally. Meals no longer feel heavy, digestion becomes smoother, and energy remains available for movement, conversation, and reflection. There is a quiet dignity in this approach to blood sugar control, because it respects the body's accumulated wisdom rather than treating it as a system in need of correction. By repeatedly choosing foods that cooperate with metabolism, seniors participate in a daily ritual of care that reinforces balance at every level. In this way, light hydrating vegetables become symbols of a larger truth, that health in later life is not about strict control or deprivation, but about creating conditions where the body can remember its natural equilibrium and sustain it with grace.